So we believe that it's beholden on us to do everything that we can to look after our home and to look after the greater body that we're all part of. So in Vita Sapien, we feel that if we can awaken people to the interconnectedness between different life forms, different ecosystems, different natural processes, and when we look at the science of that, it's just astounding. It really is awe-inspiring and amazing.
Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm sitting at the COP-15, which is the conference on biodiversity that's going on in Montreal, Quebec, Canada at the moment. And I've got Nick Bestevaar with me. Nick is going to tell us all about Vita Sapien. I got the badge along with colleagues from the Vita Planeta Limited organization, which is based in Australia. You know, Nick has a pivotal role. He can explain a bit about who he is and how he got involved in Vita Sapien and what the main messages are.
Thanks very much, Paul. It's great to be here with you. Lovely to meet you again, finally. So I got involved with Vita Sapien earlier this year. I've always had a love of nature, and I've always had an interest in spirituality. But funnily enough, I never really found that any of the religions appealed to me. So I was looking for something, some way to nurture my spirit, and I found it through Vita Sapien. It's what I've been looking for in terms of being a spiritual framework that is grounded in science and is ecological or nature-based.
So I gather that you met Guy Lane at some point, and maybe over a few beers he got you involved, or how did that work?
Yes, indeed. Actually, our first meeting was in the Regatta Hotel in Brisbane, a fine old hotel. And we'd had some conversations. We'd met through mutual associates and had some conversations about the state of the world and the state of the environment, the state of the climate. Yeah, it became apparent that we had some common interests there. I had previously done a project, an eco-spirituality project, and so I had an introduction through a mentor into the world of eco-psychology. And it turned out that this was the essence of Guy's work as well. So we found that we were resonating on so many levels and just sort of started to have more and more conversations. And I've found that Vita Sapien is now my main vehicle, I guess, for appreciating nature and appreciating living a good life, a spiritual life. And to the extent that I've become a director of the organisation just a couple of months ago, just before preparing to come here to the COP.
Thank you. So I've had a look at your very interesting and informative website, and also you've got this booklet on, you're calling it ecological spirituality, but I guess, when I look at it, it's almost like a different philosophy, a different way to view the planet. And, it's very much along the lines of James Lovelock's ideas of so-called Gaia, where the Earth is one, everything's interconnected. We know that. And we need a lot more people, scientists, to look at the connections between the different elements. And there's all kinds of different feedbacks and things that are going on, which can either work against us. Most of the feedbacks in the climate system are against us at the moment. For example, as we lose more and more sea ice, the Arctic warms more and more, and that disrupts the jet stream further, and that leads to more and more, a lightening of the Arctic. It's not darkening rather of the Arctic, so it's absorbing more sunlight, and we get these vicious feedbacks where things sort of cascade. So, humanity is the biggest feedback that can reverse this. So can you maybe talk about some of the key points for people that aren't familiar with, like, what does Vita Sapien mean, and What are some of the key points of this philosophy or spirituality, as you call it?
So yes, Vita Sapien is inspired partly by James Lovelock's work. The difference being that his paper was a scientific hypothesis about the planet could be considered to be an organism in itself, all the life on the planet, in that it regulates its own temperature. So the paper is about self-regulation of by and for the biosphere. Whereas Vita Sapien's concept of Imperium Vitae Planeta, that's our term for the biosphere, our concept of it is more of a spiritual belief. So it's a belief in an overarching entity that we are all part of. All of us and all life on Earth can be considered cells in the body of the planetary body of life. So that's one of the aspects of Vita Sapien. And of course, humans are the most powerful or empowered entities to be able to have an effect on the state of that body of life. So we believe that it's beholden on us to do everything that we can to look after our home and to look after the greater body that we're all part of. So in Vita Sapien, we feel that if we can awaken people to, as you spoke before about the interconnectedness between different life forms, different ecosystems, different natural processes, and when we look at the science of that, it's just astounding. It really is awe-inspiring and amazing. And so in Vita Sapien, we seek to present that information to people in a way that fosters this kind of a sense of awe and a sense of amazement about the place that we live. If we can foster this kind of peak experience for people on a regular basis, then we believe that we can awaken them to the wonder of the planet, the wonder of the biosphere. And what we've found is that when you are so connected with, so awakened to that amazing vision of the whole biosphere, then you tend to want to take care of it. It naturally arises that you want to take care of something that you love, something that you feel part of, something you feel connected to. So this is the thing that Vita Sapien is primarily trying to achieve for millions of people around the planet.
Yeah, and personally, I think that part of the problem is that throughout human history, right, throughout our development of agriculture and cities, and the development from becoming hunter-gatherers sort of to being what we call advanced civilization. I mean, I'd question whether we can use that term advanced, and also our brains have actually evolved quite a bit, through this development, but we still have this sort of fight or flight instinct, this amygdala, which, you see something, there's fear, there's emotion, you want to respond. And, if you think about humans before we had structures and things, we'd be living in, say, forests or jungles, and there'd be lots of noises at night, and we'd have fires, and we'd sort of gather around fires and be in groups of people as sort of protection against nature. So there was a big fear of nature. And I think that fear of nature is deeply ingrained in many people still. And that's part of the reason why we haven't valued nature and why we've been quite content to, not content, but why, as civilizations develop, we've destroyed lots of nature, and we're continuing to destroy lots of nature. So this Vita Sapien seems to be, a very needed sort of philosophical turn in human conscious to say, well, okay, we're continuing to trash the planet. We've got to stop this. And I love your poster there of the person falling into the deep abyss. So what you're talking about is how to stop that fall and turn it around. But I mean, you don't really want to go back to civilization as it is. Like, you want to have sort of a new type of thing emerging from all of this. So you're in Australia, are you getting lots of traction in Australia? How are you finding the COP conference, this conference? I mean, you're making lots of connections with people. There's lots of like-minded people. I mean, are you getting a lot out of the conference? And are you optimistic going forward? I mean, because I think a lot of young people really like these ideas.
Absolutely, Paul. I mean, I have personally been speaking to a lot of young people here at the COP, and they obviously see the writing on the wall. They are aware, the people here at least, are aware of what science is telling us about what's coming. And many young people that I've spoken to outside of the COP as well, in day-to-day life, are also aware. And so they are all of the ones I've spoken to have been very open, very receptive, very enthusiastic about Vita Sapien's message. And many of the older people that we've talked to here as well have also been very receptive. Some not so much. Their agenda lies elsewhere, and we respect that. But we judge that we only need to reach a certain proportion of people in order to create a massive shift of pro-ecological behaviour in enough people that will make a difference. I'd like to just comment on the picture of the man over here. We actually regard him as the rising sinking man, or the sinking rising man, because on the one hand, science tells us what's coming if we don't significantly change our trajectory. But there's also a great potential in that to transform our societies, to transform the way that we live. Personally speaking, we are going to have to transform as a planetary species. We're going to have to transform one way or another. Great changes are going to come, and it's really up to us as to how we fashion the future that's ahead of us. This is why Vita Sapien has at its heart the symbol of hope, which is contained in this symbol of the Quen. Let me see if I have another piece here that shows it. Ah, yes. So here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but so this is actually one of Vita Sapien's symbols of hope. This is the symbol of the verdant age, which is a potential future time where humanity has learned to live in harmony with the biosphere, to live as part of the biosphere. And it's a very exciting time to be alive at the moment, because we have this potential to thrive, for all beings on Earth to thrive.
Now, one thing I've noticed in perusing the website and the booklet, and what I've heard or gathered from talking to you and also to Guy Lane, is that it's very science-based. Like you're looking at science-based changes, degradation of the climate system, and there's a video that Guy Lane did last year in 2021 with Stuart Scott, who's been very sort of key to myself being at these COPs. He invited me to the first one in Lima, Peru. Said, I've got air miles, just get down here. You can stay in a convent with him and a bunch of other people. So we did that, and I did that, and ever since I've been going to various COPs, and also met many people like Heidi and Charles through Stuart. So Stuart was kind of pivotal. So it's very science-based. There's some very good graphs from the scientist Will Steffen, who I didn't realize was Australian, about sort of talking about the uninhabitable Earth and the hothouse Earth. Whereas if you pass certain points, you can head down and it's very, very science-based, and there has been more papers recently, peer-reviewed scientific papers, talking about the end game for humanity, and is it possible? They're starting to actually acknowledge that we're actually heading completely in the wrong direction, and you eventually reach where you're heading, which is a much less pleasant Earth. I mean, we basically if we trash our Earth, it's misery for people in the future that haven't been born yet. And you've mentioned a lot of these sort of things, the so-called doomers, and there's different ways of dealing with this. Like I see with this type of philosophy, it's a way of combating eco-grief, especially in young people, young women who don't want to have children, for example. I mean, that's one of your focuses, right? To give people this sort of hope. And, the doomers ridicule people that have hope, and they have a term called hopium for it. And yet I argue, hope is a fundamental, it's in human nature. If we don't have hope, then what's the point of anything, right? So is there some work in Australia that you're specifically doing to deal with the eco-grief that younger people are having?
Well, actually, Paul, this is what we're working on at the moment, is developing programs that will specifically be able to address these issues that people are facing, especially young people, of course. I mean, the opposite of hope is despair. And personally, I regard despair as being, it's basically an error, because you can't definitively see the future and what will happen. And there is always the possibility of a positive critical mass being reached, at which point things change dramatically in a positive direction. That, I think, is the source of hope for me. And the other reason that I personally cultivate hope in myself on a daily basis is that when I have hope, then I'm able to be in action. If I'm able to be in action, then I'm able to make a difference toward the kind of future that I personally would like to live in. I would say that as a Vita Sapien, I would consider that the ending of the game may be approaching us, but the game is not ended yet.
One of the sticking points with people with eco-grief is, or any other thing that causes some sort of depression, or it's paralyzing. It's completely paralyzing. You don't really feel like doing much. So with the you have the little bit of hope, and then you take some action, and that's a very strong feedback, because taking a little bit of action leads to more action, and we hear inspiring stories about the an Indian, poor Indian farmer who goes and plants an entire forest by himself. He just goes out every day and plants trees, and he's got whole entire forests planted. Or the whole idea of ecosystem restoration, I think, is very important, and that's one thing that I'm seeing continuously discussed at this conference. Taking large tracts of land that have been degraded by humans and restoring ecosystems, sort of nudging the nature along. I mean, if you give nature a chance, it can recover quite quickly, and we've seen that in many different case studies around the planet. And then there's other people, more technology-minded, that are talking about carbon capture, but biomimicry or nature-based solutions. That sort of language is becoming more and more prevalent in the COPs, that both in COP-27 and certainly in this COP. That alone should give hope to many people.
Absolutely. The other thing that I would like to put forward to your viewers is that we've developed this booklet that you have there, the Vita Sapien Pass Around Pocketbook. This booklet summarises our message and sort of presents as an introduction to what Vita Sapien is all about. It's organised into chapters for easy reading, and it takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the individual, to read and absorb its contents. And we did that because we wanted a way to very easily and quickly give people a message of optimism and of hope, and to open their eyes to a way that they can start to take these small actions in their daily lives. And that book is downloadable from our website as well, vitasapien.org. That's vitasapien.org. And so it's freely available. We're giving these away, freely available to everyone. And in the back of the book is some pages where people can write down a little note of inspiration or reflection, and then they can pass on the book to somebody else to read as well. Guy always jokes that if you put your name and details in the very back of the book, in the very last box, then you might actually get the book returned to you at the end with all the comments in it from other people. And wouldn't that be amazing?
Thank you. And I've noticed that you have these, they're like sort of like playing cards. Now, I don't think we can play poker with them, unfortunately, but what are you using these for? I've seen them actually lying on various tables around the conference. So it's either you or Guy or somebody else who's been, putting them there or
Yeah, absolutely. These were actually Guy's brainchild. He came up with the brilliant idea to create these little cards that just have a very, very attractive image on the front, a very eye-catching image, and just a very brief message, a simple message on the back. Now, a few of these cards are designed to give people information that will open their eyes to the situation that we're in, because a lot of people at the moment don't fully realise what we're facing at the moment. For example, that the technosphere now outweighs the biosphere. So according to a recent paper, the mass of the man-made built environment outweighs the mass of the natural environment on the planet. And on the back of the card there is a reference to the paper, so you can actually go and have a look at the scientific paper for those who are interested. And then it just gives a brief summary of Vita Sapien. Vita Sapien is an ecological spirituality grounded in the environmental sciences. And then, of course, the website address there. So a few of those have been put together to give people that message. And then a couple of them are giving a positive message as well. So we give these away as a set so that people have got both the serious information as well as the positive or optimistic information. This one, I really love this one, Vita Sapien's Golden Rule. So most of the world's religions actually share a common tenet, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or some variation of that. But they, in that tenet, they don't include the living planet, the biosphere, the home that we all live on. So Vita Sapien's Golden Rule is do unto others and the living planet as you would have them do unto you. So we feel that really completes the picture.
Okay, now, when I was at the COP-27, I was on an interfaith panel with, people representing Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and there was a banner that these different groups put together that had different passages from different religious texts, the Bible or the Quran or whatever, and it was about what that religion thought about the earth that we live on. And like I say, there's this dual thing because, on the one hand, part of our brain has this fear for nature and, wild beasts, and that's been to our detriment because we still have that brain wiring. It's just evolved. We've had higher and higher levels building up on that basic brain level, but that's sort of the lowest level, which is the base of our emotions when we see a tiger running at us or a shark, or we have this fear, right? But we're trying to overcome that. We still have a person brain, in modern day, is what it comes down to. If you talk to psychologists, it's really fascinating. So this is really a way of changing that, getting at the root of that and putting it into something, we're in symbiosis with nature. We can't be against nature. We can't be destroying nature. So are there any last thoughts that you would like to make about this? I mean, how are you surviving minus 10 Celsius in Montreal, being from Australia?
Yes, that's actually quite an adventure. I'm actually quite liking it though. I was able to come with good equipment, good layers, so it's all about the layers. But I would actually like to comment on your point before about the reptilian brain and the fear of nature. I guess that I have to speak personally here. I guess that when I look at a lot of Indigenous cultures, I see that they live with the reality of the risks of nature every day, and they still yet carry in their hearts a great love for their land that they live in, the land that they live with, and the various living beings that they share it with. And I think that what we can develop is, I think that we can transform our fear into a respect for nature and for those parts of nature that would do us harm if they could. I think that we can learn to govern that kind of base fear of nature, especially living here in the West. You know, there aren't that many risks to us here. Yeah, so I think that we can learn to live with respect and humility and honouring the natural world. And I'd also like to just mention about, you spoke about religions before and how they view the natural world. And I'd like to emphasize, I think, that Vita Sapien is a spiritual framework or a philosophy that we intended to be used, I guess, or to be taken on board alongside of any other spiritual belief or spiritual system that anybody has and holds dear to their heart. It's really meant to be as a complement to other religious practices, religious beliefs, or spiritual practices that people may have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different way of connecting with nature, irregardless of what other beliefs you may have. And, you know, also, I think it gets at sort of, I mean, we think that we're rational, logical people being humans, but, you know, we have this logical side of our brain and we have this emotional side, and the emotional side is quite often not logical. I mean, I ask people, you know, what their greatest fear is. Well, fear of sharks. Have you ever swum in the ocean? No. Well, how is this ever going to be possible that this is just an irrational fear, right? And you know the way we weigh risks in our society is often irrational as well. So when the probability of something is very very low, but it'll affect every single person on the planet, then multiply those two numbers together, and the risk is significant, and we don't weigh those correctly either. So. Anyway, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today about Vita Sapien and about your great work at the COP here. So thank you, and thank you for watching and supporting. Please support Climate Emergency Forum by sharing our work and clicking on the links and subscribing. So thank you.